everybody, welcome back to our channel. I'm Lauren and I am here in the kitchen today to show you how to bake bread. I know that there's a lot of uncertainty right now and tension because of the coronavirus, and it seems like the latest thing is that the stores are now out of bread as well. I just went out earlier today and there was no bread in either Target or Walmart. So I wanted to show you guys how you can bake your own bread, just for a few reasons. So number one, if bread is really a staple in your family, you can do it yourself. Number two, it's a very calming and relaxing task to do, so that's helpful in this time. And then also, it's a great activity to do with kids. There's so much learning. Kids love being in the kitchen, so for all of you guys who have your kids at home and are looking for more activities to keep them engaged, this is a wonderful thing to do with them. And then lastly, if I can, teach you something new to help you feel empowered and capable in this time of uncertainty, then I am happy to do that. Making bread is kind of one of those, ancient skills that not many of us do on our own anymore. I know personally, I don't think I baked my own loaf of bread until maybe 18 months ago. So at like 33 or 34 years of age was the first time I ever baked bread. So, and I also am here to tell you how incredibly easy it is. You do not need a KitchenAid mixer. You do not need a bread machine. You don't need, fancy loaf pans or any of that. This can all be done by hand with stuff that you probably already have. So here's what you're gonna need. You're gonna need a packet of yeast. I have seen that stores are getting low on yeast too. If it gets to that point, we can also make a sourdough starter, which is the way that they did it before there was manufactured packets of yeast available. So I can do another video about that if you guys want me to, but keep in mind it takes about 2 weeks to get your sourdough starter started, so that is kind of like a longer timeline there. So you need a packet of yeast. I'm using active dry yeast. Pretty much any yeast that you can find at this point is fine. You need just any old regular flour. This recipe works great with different types of flour. You can use all-purpose flour. I'm just using this white wheat flour. You'll need a little bit of salt, just a teaspoon or so. You're gonna need water, and then a little bit of honey or sugar. And then I use some olive oil, or if you have a spray, just to grease the bowl when it rises. And then the next thing I'll mention is it does take a little bit of time to make bread, so you have to let it rise. And so you're gonna need like probably about 2 hours total, but it's great because you can walk away, set it and forget it, do other things, and then come back to it. So let's do it. The first thing that I'm gonna do is get my yeast activated or wake them up by feeding them some sugar and putting them in some water. And for this, it's really important that you use lukewarm water. Some people use a thermometer to get the temperature exact. I've never done that, but you want the water to be warm to enliven the yeast, but not hot enough to kill them. So gently warm water, okay? So I'm gonna get that going. The recipe that I'm doing today calls for a total of 1 2/3 cup of water. So I'm doing 2/3 cup of water now, and then you add the rest of the water later. This water right here is just helping to get the yeast started. So yeast need some sort of sugar to eat, right? I'm using some honey. If you have regular granulated sugar, works just as fine. I'm gonna mix just about a teaspoon into this water till it dissolves. And then I'm gonna add my yeast on top. So there's no way around this step. This is a step that you have to do. And you guys probably remember or know just that the yeast will eat through the sugar. And one of the byproducts of their activities is CO2. And that's the kicker to everything. That's what makes the bread expand and makes the bread fluffy. Okay, so the honey is stirred in. And then we're just going to add our packet of yeast, and we're just gonna add the entire packet. And if you've never cooked with bread yeast before, they just look like little light brown, little tan granules. And then you just very gently stir it in. You don't want to be too harsh here. Now, the next thing that you do is you just set it here and walk away for 15 minutes. When we come back, we're gonna check to see that bubbles have been formed, and that's when we know that the yeast is alive and it's working and it's gonna produce a great loaf of bread. So it's just actually only been about 5 minutes, and see how foamy and frothy this has gotten. So that is what you're looking for when you make this on your own. I'm gonna let mine sit for a few more minutes, but this is a good indication. Now we know that the yeast is awake. So if I was doing this and came and checked on it and the yeast was just not foaming like this, then I would know that the yeast is not alive and you'd have to start over again. If you don't have active yeast, the bread's not gonna rise. It's just gonna be flat and dull. I have only ever had it happen to me one time, that I did this step with the sugar or the honey in the water and my yeast didn't foam. And either I killed it by making the water a little too hot, or it was a bad packet, which I heard can happen. But like I said, I've only ever had that happen to me one time. So it's pretty easy, it's pretty foolproof, so don't worry about that. You can do this. So yeah, and I'm just gonna let it sit a few more minutes so more of those little yeast can wake up, and then we'll continue. Now, having given the yeast another 15 minutes, look how fluffy and foamy that is. That's exactly what you want. So now on to the fun part. So I'm gonna add that all to the bowl, and then I'm also gonna add an additional cup of water. Remember, I already had 2/3. I'm just rinsing this out a little more too. And now I'm adding the additional cup. So now we have 1 2/3 cup of water in here. And this is where I'm gonna add an additional about a teaspoon of salt, just for flavor. And then I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of honey. And this can go directly down into the water and yeast mixture. Let's put another glob in there. Cool. And this is where we start adding the flour and turn it into our bread dough. When I'm beginning the recipe, I like to use a whisk to incorporate everything. And then after a minute or two of that, it's gonna get a little too thick and I will switch to a wooden spoon. So the amount of flour that you're gonna use is somewhere around 4 cups. It's never an exact thing with bread making because the amount of flour that you might need could vary depending on your location and the humidity of where you live. So just keep going till you think it's a good dough and you don't want it to be too dry. So there's 1. There's 2 cups. And you just want to add 1 cup at a time so that each cup gets incorporated before you move on to adding another. So that was 2, and now I'm moving on to my 3rd cup. And about this point, it's getting a bit too thick for my whisk. So I'm going to switch to my wooden spoon. And it's kind of funny, but this wooden spoon is one of my favorite possessions. It's hand carved and it's made out of walnut, I believe. And I got it at an amazing farmer's market out near Whitefish, Montana, when Daniel and I were living in the RV and doing our year-long travel road trip. And I just love it. It always reminds me of great memories out there on the road. And I love that it was made by a girl who was a local crafter there. And so I just love supporting others. Me happy every time I use it. Okay, so I'm at about 3 cups. Switching to my spoon. I definitely think it's gonna take another cup. So you don't want your dough to be too sticky. So now I'm just gonna add only half at a time so that I make sure that I don't go overboard. I'm glad I did that because I think that's going to end up being enough for me. So I'm going to end up somewhere around 3.5 cups, which is pretty typical for me. Okay, so now we're at the point that we can roll this out on my counter here. Just moving my pans out of the way, getting this surface ready. All right, so in the end, I did end up adding about another cup, so we were a bit closer to 4 this time. Okay. And now for the stress relief part, the kneading. This is also a really fun part that kids can help with. Just flour your surface, flour your dough ball. You want to press it down with your hand, fold it over, and give it a turn. So there's different schools of thought about like how long you should knead your dough. Some people say to knead it 100 or 150 times. Other recipes say 6 minutes. So I don't know. I'm gonna count to 100 or 50 or so and see how long that takes me. Anytime your dough gets a little wet, you can just always add a little bit more flour. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, the reason that we need the dough is to develop the gluten. So gluten is the component that makes the bread fluffy and elasticy, and it does need some pressure to develop. Okay, so in the end, I lost count several times, but I'm pretty sure, about 5 minutes have passed. And I'm pretty sure that I did it at least 150 times. Another indication that you want for your dough is if you poke it, it springs back and has an elastic nature to it. So now we can put it in a bowl and let it rise. So next you wanna give the yeast time to do their thing and let this rise. So just take a big bowl, and I drizzle some olive oil in it. You could also use like cooking spray if you have that. And then you just want to coat your ball of dough. Awesome. Oh, this is probably a little too much, but that's okay. And then you want to cover it and set it in a warm place to rise for 45 minutes. You can cover it with plastic wrap or with like a damp kitchen towel. It's really fun at this point too with the kids if you want to take a before and an after picture. So I think I'm going to do that too for fun. Okay, this is looking so awesome. It's been a little bit over an hour since I left my dough to rise. And so, it's awesome. So you can even see how there's the air bubbles, the yeast are really doing their job. There's even little holes where the air has come through. So now I'm just going to cut this in half because this amount is gonna make 2 loaves. I'm gonna put half of it in this cast iron loaf pan, and then, so that'll be like a traditional loaf, and then I'm gonna put the other half in this cast iron skillet, and that's gonna be a round bread. But if you don't have a loaf pan, it doesn't matter. All you have to do, you can just shape these up and even put them on a cookie sheet. I've done that before too, and in fact, I think that's what they generally always do for baguettes. So I'm just gonna half this. And so what I'm gonna do for the loaf one is I'm gonna kind of press it into a triangle. I'll move this so you can see a little bit better. I'm just gonna kind of press this out into a triangle, get the air bubbles out. There we go. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna roll it. And then I'm going to kind of cinch the ends and tuck those under. There we go. And then you just place it in the loaf pan with the seam side down. There we go. It's not the most beautiful one that I've ever done, but it doesn't really matter. Cool. Now this is gonna rise again for another 45 minutes. Let me just go ahead and do this one. Just gonna kind of fold it over itself and stretch it so it's like a little ball. And then just place it in my pan. So now another 45 minutes, and after that, these can bake. This is what's known as a second rising. So these are gonna rise up again. I'm gonna redo this one because I messed it up. It's just a little too long. There we go. That's better. There we go. I'm feeling better about this one now. All right, 45 minutes. Then we'll be back. Okay guys, another 45 minutes have passed, and just check it out. Just like I said, these are already fluffed all the way back up again. When I had first separated the dough, it got punched down and it was maybe only up to like 3/4 of the way full. Now it's well over the top. That is gonna be such a pretty loaf. It smells so good already. And get ready because your house is gonna be smelled with, or your house is gonna be filled with the beautiful smell of fresh baked bread. There's really nothing like it. So these are gonna go in 390, kind of like lower the rack on the stove and cook them for like 25 to 30 minutes. And when we're done, I'll show you how to know whether they're done or not. So let's do it. All right, my loaves have baked for about 30 minutes and I'm gonna take them out. Look at that beautiful color. So gorgeous. So one of the ways you can tell if it's done is it should be hollow. You should be able to knock on it. I'm gonna go ahead and free one from its enclosure because these cast iron pans retain heat for a long time. Woo! It's hot. Look at that! Beautiful loaf of bread. Awesome! Okay, let me get a plate or a platter or something. I'm gonna let these cool on this plate. I'm gonna pop out my round one as well. Go. And there's the other one. Hear that? It's a hollow that I'm talking about. So these turned out really well. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope it's something that you can try while you're at home during this time of social distancing. Feel free to drop me a comment or please let me know if you do it. Yeah, I just hope this is helpful, something fun to do while we're all kind of at home and feeling some anxiety, and hopefully it'll feed your family too. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.